The sound of Willow Davis's ragged breathing cut through the crisp Montana night as she stumbled through the darkness, her torn dress catching on every bramble and bush in her desperate flight from town. Behind her, the unmistakable shouts of Sheriff Holloway grew louder, his drunken threats echoing across the moonlit plains of Timber Creek in 1879. She had refused his advances for the last time, and now she was paying the price. "Come back here, you ungrateful woman," the sheriff bellowed, his voice slurred but still menacing enough to send chills down Willow's spine. "Nobody refuses me. Nobody." Willow's heart hammered against her ribs as she pushed her body forward, the hem of her once beautiful blue dress now caked with mud and torn in several places. At 22, she had survived the loss of her parents to typhoid, managed her father's small general store alone for 3 years, and fended off unwanted suitors with quiet dignity. But tonight, Sheriff Holloway had cornered her after closing, his breath reeking of whiskey, his hands rough as he tried to force himself on her. She'd struck him with a heavy ledger book and fled, but the humiliation had transformed into rage, and now he was hunting her like an animal. The distant lights of a homestead appeared in the darkness ahead. Willow had no idea whose property she was approaching, but desperation drove her forward. As she drew closer, she could make out a large barn and a modest ranch house. The barn door stood slightly ajar, a sliver of lantern light spilling out onto the packed dirt of the yard. Without hesitation, Willow slipped inside, her eyes adjusting to the dim interior. The sweet smell of hay and horses surrounded her as she pressed herself against the wall, trying to control her breathing. "Where are you hiding, Willow?" Sheriff Holloway's voice was closer now, maybe 100 yards behind her. "You think you can embarrass me in front of the whole town and get away with it?" Panic seized her as she frantically searched for a hiding place. The barn was well kept, with several horses shifting restlessly in their stalls. She ducked behind a stack of hay bales, pulling her knees to her chest and making herself as small as possible. The sound of boots on hard-packed earth grew louder, and Willow held her breath. But instead of the sheriff's heavy, uneven footfalls, these steps were measured and calm. They entered the barn, and she heard the soft click of a lantern being adjusted. "Easy there, Tempest," a deep voice murmured to one of the horses. "What's got you all worked up tonight?" Willow remained frozen, uncertain whether this stranger would be any safer than the sheriff. But when the shouts from outside grew closer, she made a split-second decision. "Please," she whispered, emerging from behind the hay bales with her hands raised. "Please help me." The man spun around, startled. In the lantern light, Willow could see he was tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in a simple flannel shirt and worn denim pants. His face was partially shadowed by his hat, but she could make out a strong jaw covered in a day's worth of stubble. "Madam." His voice held surprise but no threat. "The sheriff, he's after me," Willow explained hurriedly, wringing her hands. "I didn't do anything wrong, I swear it." He tried to, her voice broke. Understanding darkened the man's expression immediately. Without another word, he strode to the barn door and peered out. In the distance, Sheriff Holloway's drunken calls could still be heard, growing closer by the second. The man closed the barn door firmly and slid the heavy wooden bolt into place, locking it. "Stay quiet," he instructed, his voice low. Willow nodded, trembling from cold and fear as the man extinguished the lantern, plunging them into darkness broken only by thin slices of moonlight through the barn slats. Heavy footsteps approached the barn, followed by a pounding on the door that made Willow jump. "Open up. Sheriff Holloway here. I'm looking for a fugitive." The stranger moved to stand protectively in front of Willow. "Evening, Sheriff," he called out, his tone deliberately casual. "Something I can help you with at this hour?" "Knox Prescott, that you? Open this door. I'm pursuing a criminal." Knox, that was his name, folded his arms across his chest. "My barn's locked up for the night, Sheriff. What kind of criminal are you after that would come all the way out to my place?" The Davis woman. She assaulted me and fled. It's my duty to bring her in. Knox didn't move toward the door. Haven't seen anyone tonight, Sheriff. Just me and my horses here. You might want to check down by the creek. Lots of places to hide there. There was a moment of silence, followed by a string of curses. If I find out you're lying to me, Prescott, you'll regret it. I have no reason to lie to you, Sheriff. But it's late, and I'd appreciate it if you'd take your search elsewhere. You're spooking my horses. The sheriff pounded on the door once more, then they heard him stumble away, muttering threats and obscenities as he went. Knox waited several minutes before relighting the lantern, keeping the flame low. In the soft glow, Willow could see him more clearly. Now he had kind eyes the color of a summer sky, set in a face weathered by sun and wind. He wasn't handsome in the conventional way of the dandies who frequented her store, but there was something compelling about his features that made it difficult to look away. "Thank you," Willow whispered, her voice still unsteady. "I don't know what I would have done if—" "No need to explain," Knox interrupted gently. "I know Holloway's reputation. Are you hurt?" Willow shook her head, though now that the immediate danger had passed, she became aware of various scrapes and bruises from her frantic escape. "Nothing serious." Knox nodded, then removed his coat and offered it to her. "You're shaking like a leaf. Put this on." The coat was warm from his body and smelled of leather, horses, and something distinctly masculine. Willow pulled it around her shoulders gratefully. "I'm Knox Prescott," he said, keeping his distance, as if afraid of frightening her further. "I run this ranch." "Willow Davis," she replied. "I own the general store in town." Recognition flickered in his eyes. "I've been in a few times. Usually deal with an older fellow, though." "My father," Willow explained. "He passed away 3 years ago. I've been running it since." Knox nodded, a new respect evident in his expression. "You can't go back tonight. Not with Holloway on the prowl. You're welcome to stay in my house. I'll sleep out here in the barn." Willow hesitated, her mind racing. She'd just fled one dangerous situation. Was she stepping into another? As if reading her thoughts, Knox took a step back. "I understand your caution, Miss Davis. But I give you my word as a gentleman that no harm will come to you under my roof. Or," he added with a small smile, "my barn if you prefer to stay here instead." There was something in his steady gaze that inspired trust. Perhaps it was the way he'd immediately understood her plight, or how he'd stood between her and danger without hesitation. "Your house would be fine, Mr. Prescott." "Thank you." Knox's ranch house was modest but neat, with a main room containing a stone fireplace, a kitchen area, and simple but sturdy furniture. He quickly built up the fire, then showed her to a small bedroom. "This was my mother's room," he explained, lighting a lamp on the bedside table. "She passed last winter. There are some of her things in the chest if you need a nightgown or fresh clothes." Willow glanced around the room, noting the handmade quilt on the bed and the small cross hanging on the wall. "I'm sorry for your loss." Knox nodded, his expression softening momentarily. "She'd be glad her things are helping someone in need. There's a wash basin and pitcher on the dresser. I'll be out in the barn if you need anything." Before she could thank him again, he was gone, his footsteps receding across the wooden floor of the main room. Willow sank onto the bed, exhaustion suddenly overwhelming her. The events of the night seemed almost dreamlike now, but the mud on her dress and the scratches on her arms confirmed the reality of her narrow escape. She found a simple cotton nightgown in the chest, washed as best she could with the cold water in the pitcher, and changed quickly. As she slipped between the clean sheets, Willow realized this was the first time she'd slept anywhere but her own bed above the store since her parents died. The thought brought unexpected tears to her eyes, tears of fear, relief, and something else she couldn't quite name. Morning arrived with pale golden light filtering through the simple muslin curtains. For a moment, Willow was disoriented, then the memories of the previous night came flooding back. She dressed quickly in one of Mrs. Prescott's simple skirts and blouses, which fit reasonably well despite being a bit loose around the waist. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found Knox at the stove, frying bacon. He'd clearly been up for hours. His hair was damp from washing, and he wore a clean shirt. "Good morning, Miss Davis," he said, glancing up. "I hope you slept well, considering the circumstances." "Better than I expected, thank you." Willow hovered uncertainly in the doorway. "I should get back to town." "The store? I took the liberty of riding into town at first light," Knox interrupted, sliding the bacon onto a plate. "Didn't go all the way in, just to the edge. Holloway's got men watching your store. Word is he's telling people you stole money from him, and he's waiting to arrest you when you return." Willow's legs nearly gave out. She sank into a chair at the small table. "That's absurd." I know," Knox said, placing a cup of coffee in front of her. "But Holloway's not known for his honesty, and he's got the badge. Eat something. We need to figure out what to do." They ate in silence, Willow's mind racing through her limited options. She had some savings hidden in the store, but she couldn't access them with Holloway's men watching. She had no family to turn to and few close friends in town. Most people kept a respectful distance from the young woman who ran her business with quiet efficiency. "I could leave," she said finally. "Take this stage to Helena or Butte, start over." Knox shook his head. "Running looks like guilt. And Holloway would just claim that proves his accusations." "Then what? I can't hide here forever." Knox's blue eyes met hers. "No, but you can stay until we find a way to expose Holloway for what he is. This isn't the first time he's abused his position. People in town talk, but no one's been willing to stand against him." Willow repeated, something warm unfurling in her chest at the easy way he included himself in her problems. "Unless you'd rather I stay out of it," Knox amended quickly. "No," Willow said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "No, I'd be grateful for your help, Mr. Prescott." "Knox," he corrected with a small smile. "If you're going to be staying on my property for a while, we might as well use first names." "Knox," she repeated, testing the feel of it on her tongue. "Then you must call me Willow." Over the next few days, a fragile routine developed. Knox worked his ranch during the day, tending to his horses he raised and trained them for ranchers and the occasional cavalry buyer, while Willow kept to the house, helping with cooking and mending to feel useful. In the evenings, they sat by the fire, talking about their lives and planning their next steps. Knox rode into town every few days for supplies and information. Holloway maintained his watch on the store, though with decreasing manpower as days passed. The sheriff had publicly declared that Willow had stolen $50 from the town's tax collections money he'd entrusted to her for safekeeping, he claimed. "No one really believes him," Knox reported one evening, a week after Willow's arrival. "But no one's willing to call him a liar to his face either." "So, I'm still trapped," Willow sighed, setting aside the shirt she'd been mending. Knox studied her across the table. In the days she'd been at his ranch, some of the tension had left her face, though concern still shadowed her green eyes. Her auburn hair, usually pinned severely when she worked at the store, now hung in a simple braid down her back. The sight of her in his home, wearing his mother's clothes, stirred feelings he hadn't expected. "Not trapped," he said finally. "Just waiting for the right moment. Holloway's drinking more heavily than usual. Sooner or later, he'll make a mistake we can use." Willow nodded, though she didn't share his optimism. As days stretched into a second week, she found herself less anxious about returning to town and more concerned about the strange contentment she felt in Knox's company. He was unlike any man she'd known, straightforward in his speech, considerate without being patronizing, and possessed of a dry humor that often surprised a laugh from her when she least expected it. One afternoon, she was hanging laundry in the yard when Knox led a beautiful Palomino mare from the barn. "Would you like to learn to ride?" he asked, noting her interest in the horse. Buttercup here is gentle as can be. Willow hesitated. I never had the opportunity to learn. No time like the present, Knox said, holding out his hand. The riding lesson became another addition to their daily routine. Knox was a patient teacher, and Willow proved to be a natural rider once she overcame her initial nervousness. These hours together, away from the shadow of her troubles in town, allowed a different kind of conversation to flourish between them. Did you always want to train horses? Willow asked one day as they rode slowly along the creek that bordered Knox's property. Knox considered the question, adjusting his hat against the late September sun. Not specifically, but I've always loved working with animals. They don't lie or cheat or pretend to be something they're not. Unlike people, Willow observed. Some people, Knox corrected with a pointed look. Others are as true as any good horse. The compliment, indirect as it was, brought color to Willow's cheeks. Your parents built this ranch? Knox nodded. My father came out here in '49, not for gold, but for land. Met my mother in Helena. She was a schoolteacher. They married and settled here. Pa died when I was 16, so I took over early. Like me with the store, Willow said softly. Yes, though you had it harder, being a woman on your own in a town full of men who don't understand a female running a business. Willow gave him a surprised look. Most men don't see it that way. Knox shrugged. My mother taught me to judge people by their character, not their gender or the color of their skin. She was the smartest person I ever knew. As they turned back toward the ranch, Willow found herself studying Knox's profile against the backdrop of rolling hills and autumn-touched trees. In the 3 weeks she'd known him, something fundamental had shifted in her heart. The thought of eventually returning to her solitary life above the store no longer held any appeal. But such thoughts were dangerous. Knox had been kind and honorable, but he'd given no indication that he saw her as anything more than someone in need of help. And she had nothing to offer a man like him, a woman with a tarnished reputation and a business that barely kept her afloat in good times. The 3rd week of Willow's stay at the Prescott Ranch brought change in the form of an unexpected visitor. Knox and Willow were eating breakfast when the sound of an approaching horse drew their attention. Knox motioned for Willow to stay inside as he stepped onto the porch, his hand resting casually near the revolver on his hip. Through the window, Willow could see a lean man with spectacles dismounting from a dappled gray horse. Relief washed over Knox's face as he stepped forward to greet the visitor. Judge Parker, this is an unexpected pleasure. The older man clasped Knox's hand warmly. Knox, my boy, I've come on a matter of some importance. May I come in? Knox hesitated, glancing back at the house. I have a guest at present. The judge's expression turned knowing. Miss Willow Davis, I presume? That's actually why I'm here. Willow's heart leaped into her throat as Knox escorted the judge inside. She stood nervously as the men entered, uncertain whether this development boded well or ill for her situation. Miss Davis, the judge said, removing his hat. I'm Judge William Parker. I ride circuit through this county and several others. I'm pleased to find you well. Thank you, sir, Willow replied cautiously. Have you come to arrest me? The judge chuckled, shaking his head. Quite the contrary, my dear. I've come to inform you that the charges against you have been dropped. More than that, Sheriff Holloway has been removed from his position. Willow sank back into her chair in shock.
How?
Why? Judge Parker accepted the cup of coffee Knox offered and took a seat at the table. It seems our former sheriff made a critical error. While drinking at the saloon last night, he boasted about how he'd fixed that Davis woman for refusing his advances. Said he'd made up the theft to teach her a lesson. And people believed him? Knox asked incredulously. He was quite drunk, the judge explained. And he said it in front of half the town, including your friend Michael Thompson, who serves on the town council. Mr. Thompson came to me directly, along with 3 other witnesses. I conducted a brief investigation this morning, examining the tax records, which showed no discrepancy. When confronted with the evidence and witnesses, Holloway admitted his fabrication. Willow pressed her hand to her mouth, tears of relief stinging her eyes. So I can go home? My store is still yours untouched, Judge Parker assured her. Mr. Thompson has been looking after it in your absence. Though I understand he's not much of a shopkeeper, he's been sending most customers away until you return. Knox placed a hand on Willow's shoulder, a gesture of support that didn't go unnoticed by the judge. This is wonderful news. Judge Parker studied them both carefully. Indeed. Though I feel I should mention, Miss Davis, that while the false charges have been dismissed, there has been some talk about your extended stay here at Mr. Prescott's ranch. Small towns being what they are. Willow's momentary joy dimmed. Of course there would be gossip. An unmarried woman staying with an unmarried man, regardless of the circumstances, was scandalous by any standard. Judge Parker, Knox said, his voice taking on a formal tone that Willow hadn't heard before. I have conducted myself as a gentleman throughout Miss Davis's stay. She has resided in my mother's room, while I've slept in the barn. I never suggested otherwise, the judge said mildly. I merely thought you both should be prepared for the reception you might face in town. He finished his coffee and stood. I should be on my way. I have several more stops on my circuit today. As Knox walked the judge out to his horse, Willow remained at the table, conflicting emotions warring within her. She was free to return to her life, her business, her independence. Yet the prospect filled her with a strange emptiness rather than joy. Knox returned, his expression unreadable. Well, he said, leaning against the doorframe. It seems your ordeal is over. Willow nodded, unable to meet his eyes. Yes. I should probably gather my things. I've imposed on your hospitality long enough. You've never been an imposition, Willow. His voice was soft, almost sad. These weeks have been, he stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. Have been what? Willow prompted, finally looking up at him. Knox pushed away from the doorframe and came to sit across from her. The least lonely I've felt since my mother died. Maybe even before that. The simple honesty of his statement caught Willow off guard. I've felt the same, she admitted. I've been alone since my parents died, even surrounded by people in town. But here, with you, I haven't felt alone at all. Something shifted in Knox's blue eyes, a certainty, a decision made. Then don't go back to being alone, Willow. Stay here, with me. Willow's breath caught in her throat. Knox, the gossip would only get worse if I stayed now, without the excuse of hiding from the sheriff. Then we'll give them something else to talk about. Knox reached across the table and took her hand in his. Marry me. What? Willow stared at him in shock. Knox, you can't, we barely know each other. I know you're brave and resourceful. I know you work hard and don't complain. I know you have a kind heart and a sharp mind. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. I know that when you smile, really smile, it lights up your whole face in a way that makes me forget whatever I was doing. And I know that the thought of you leaving makes me feel like someone's taking away the sunshine. Tears welled in Willow's eyes. That's not love, Knox. That's gratitude, or admiration, or it's love, he interrupted firmly. I may not be a man of many words, Willow Davis, but I know my own heart. I loved you the moment you stepped out from behind those hay bales, dirty and terrified but still standing tall. Every day since has only made that feeling stronger. Willow found herself speechless, caught between joy and disbelief. But what about my store? My independence? Keep the store. Run it just as you have been. I'd never ask you to give up something that matters to you. Knox squeezed her hand gently. I'm not proposing because I think you need taking care of, Willow. I'm proposing because I think we'd be good partners, in life and in love. Willow studied his face, searching for any sign of doubt or hesitation. She found none, only a steady certainty that mirrored the growing conviction in her own heart. "Yes," she whispered, then more firmly. "Yes, I'll marry you, Knox Prescott." The smile that broke across Knox's face was like sunrise after the longest night. He stood, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. For a moment, they simply held each other, the rightness of it settling into Willow's bones like a truth she'd always known but just discovered. When Knox finally kissed her, it was gentle at first, a question more than a demand. Willow answered by winding her arms around his neck and drawing him closer, deepening the kiss until they were both breathless. "We should go into town today," Knox said when they finally parted. "Reclaim your store, face whatever gossip is waiting, and let everyone know our intentions." Willow nodded, courage flowing through her veins like never before. Together. The ride into Timber Creek that afternoon drew curious stares from everyone they passed. Knox and Willow rode side by side, her on Buttercup and him on his stallion, Thunder. When they reached the general store, Michael Thompson was sweeping the porch, a task he abandoned immediately upon seeing them. "Willow, thank the Lord you're safe." The balding councilman hurried down the steps. "The judge found you, then?" "He did," Willow confirmed, accepting Knox's help to dismount. "Thank you for looking after the store, Michael. Least I could do after what Holloway put you through." Michael glanced between her and Knox, curiosity evident in his expression. "The whole town's talking about how that no-good sheriff made up those charges. And I imagine they're talking about other things as well," Knox said evenly, his hand resting protectively at the small of Willow's back. Michael had the grace to look embarrassed. "Well, people will talk, you know how it is." "Indeed," Willow agreed. "And soon they'll have something new to discuss. Mr. Prescott and I are engaged to be married." Michael's eyebrows shot up to where his hairline used to be. "Well, I'll be. That's wonderful news." He pumped Knox's hand enthusiastically. "You're a lucky man, Prescott. Willow's the finest woman in this county." "Believe me, I know it," Knox replied with a smile that warmed Willow from the inside out. News of their engagement spread through Timber Creek faster than wildfire in August. By evening, the store had been visited by what seemed like half the town, ostensibly to purchase goods but really to confirm the gossip and offer congratulations. The general reaction was positive relief that Willow was safe, outrage at Holloway's actions, and approval of Knox as a respected rancher and businessman. As the last customer left and Willow locked the door, exhaustion settled over her. "I'd forgotten how tiring it is to be the center of attention," she admitted, leaning against the counter. Knox chuckled, moving to stand before her. "We could have waited a few days to make our announcement." "No," Willow said firmly. "I'm done hiding or being ashamed of things I haven't done wrong. Being here with you, openly declaring our intentions, it feels right." Knox's expression softened as he brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I'm proud of you, Willow, and proud to be the man you've chosen." "So what happens now?" she asked, looking around the store that had been her whole world for so long. "Now we plan our future," Knox said simply. "We can marry whenever you're ready, tomorrow or next month, it's your choice. You keep running the store, I keep training horses, and we build a life together that makes us both happy." Willow considered this. The ride to town every day would be long. "We could build a small house closer to town if you prefer." Willow shook her head. "No, I love your ranch, our ranch. But perhaps we could hire someone to help in the store, so I wouldn't need to be here every day." Knox nodded, his thumbs tracing small circles on her waist. "Whatever you want, Willow. I meant what I said about being partners. Your happiness matters to me as much as my own." 2 weeks, Willow decided suddenly. "Let's marry in 2 weeks. Just enough time to arrange things properly, but not so long that people start gossiping again." Knox's smile was answer enough, but he sealed the agreement with a kiss that promised a lifetime of such moments, tender, passionate, and absolutely right. The wedding took place on a crisp October morning, with the aspen trees glowing gold against the Montana sky. Judge Parker returned to Timber Creek specifically to perform the ceremony, which was held in the small church and attended by nearly everyone in town. Willow wore a simple white dress that Knox had ordered from Helena, delivered just in time by the stagecoach. As they exchanged vows, Willow marveled at the strange path that had led her to this moment. A terrifying night, a desperate flight, a barn door locked against danger, all had somehow brought her to the greatest happiness she'd ever known. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Judge Parker declared, beaming at the couple. "Mr. Prescott, you may kiss your bride." Knox's kiss was reverent and full of promise, a perfect beginning to their life together. The celebration afterward was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard and food contributed by half the women in town. As the afternoon gave way to evening and guests began to depart, Willow found herself standing by the corral, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Knox's arms slipped around her waist as he came to stand behind her. "Happy, Mrs. Prescott?" he murmured against her ear. Willow leaned back against his solid chest, a sense of peace settling over her that she'd never known before. "Happier than I ever imagined possible." Even though our beginning was rather unconventional, there was a smile in his voice. "Especially because of that," Willow replied, turning in his arms to face him. "If the sheriff hadn't chased me that night, if you hadn't found me and locked that barn door, I'd have found you eventually," Knox said with certainty. "Some things are meant to be, Willow. Some loves are written in the stars long before we ever meet." As twilight deepened around them and the first stars appeared in the vast Montana sky, Willow believed him. From terror to safety, from loneliness to love, their journey had only just begun, but already she knew it was the greatest adventure of her life.